Welcome to the Mind Solution Podcast with Sarah Maud. The Mind Solution Podcast is for leaders like you who are passionate about well-being in the workplace because you understand that a strong, resilient and happy workforce is the key to your organisation's success. The Mind Solution Podcast is here to help you. So join us every week where we'll share with you powerful insights, strategies and know-how to ensure that your people and your organisation are truly thriving from the inside out. So welcome. I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Dr. Amy Johnson. And Amy is a social psychologist. She's a coach. She is the founder of the Little School of Big Change and the author of 3 top-selling books, Being Human, The Little Book of Big Change, which I've just finished reading and absolutely adored, and Just a Thought. And Amy specializes in helping people to break their patterns, break their habits when it comes to things like binge eating, smoking, alcohol, and even compulsive thinking, but without having to do battle with your willpower. So thank you so much for your time, Amy. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Sarah. I'm happy to have this conversation.
Now, for anybody that's listening, they might be thinking, oh, wow, I would love to be able to break a habit or an addiction without having to do battle. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to just share some of your own background, your own story, and what brought you to this wisdom and insight.
Yeah, I was kind of an anxious kid, so I was always and I was very I don't know what the word is, but always insanely curious, I guess, and also maybe a little nerdy. Just wanting to know, like, why do we think the way we do? What's going on here? And I mean, from the age of like 6 or 7, so it was a little nerdy for a
Okay.
little kid. But so I knew I was going to study psychology and how the mind works and how life works, which is what I feel like we're really talking about from the time I was young. And there was also always kind of in there a little agenda to like, okay, this is going to fix me too, you know? So I went down that path and I trained as a psychologist and I worked as a coach and things, I saw so many amazing things and life got, really nice, a lot nicer than it had been. But I always had that sense that there was still deeper to go, that this wasn't really it. And I had it for myself and for my clients for sure, because I would work with people and help them around a specific area, but then they would come back and like something else very similar would pop up and they didn't look similar to them. So maybe they would say like, oh, my boss doesn't respect me. And we'd look at those thoughts and look at those feelings and all of that. And they'd come to see that differently. But then, a few weeks later, someone else doesn't respect them or someone else doesn't understand them. And they weren't seeing what was in common between all of this. And but I wasn't sure what to do with it. I knew like, okay, I'm not doing the best. I'm not going as deep as I can, but I didn't really know either. So along that same time, I was also, my anxiety had pretty much gone away, but it was coming up in different forms and especially around food stuff. So when I would get a little anxious, my mind would want to control food or think about food and do, and I see now that that's just a busy mind. It was the same thing I was always going through, but it looked like a different issue. So I wasn't doing quite as well as I could be. And really in just an effort to see more of myself and to help my clients better, I just kept looking and coming across deeper understandings of who we are and how we work. And then I finally hit on something that my 8-year binge eating bulimia habit just looked radically different and went away quite quickly, which was kind of a miracle and a surprise to me. So that's sort of what I write about in the book, and now it's where my work focuses.
Amazing. And it's so fascinating because as a solution focused psychotherapist, and I don't know about being a psychologist, but we are often taught to have to find the link, find the root cause, deal with the past in order to have any kind of separation from a habit or addiction. Was it like that for you when you were studying psychology?
It was, and I think also, I mean, that's what we learn in our training as psychologists and psychotherapists. But if you think about it, I think we're also just conditioned that way, just as everyday human beings, right? Everybody wants to know why and what's the cause, and no matter what it is in life, if your kid comes home from school kind of grumpy, why? What happened? What's wrong? So yeah, it was professionally, and I think even in a bigger sense, my mind, and I think all minds are always looking for like what made this happen, because
Yeah.
we want control. Our mind wants control. So if we can find that cause, we think, well, that'll be easy. I'll just dig forever and find that cause, and then I'll fix it.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I sort of think about even conversations or things that I've heard about, alcoholism, it's genetic. I'm like, well, actually, it's not genetic. But
Yeah.
you're right, there's so many conditioned beliefs about what creates it and what's needed to be able to resolve it. But I'm really curious about what was it that you saw about your own pattern that allowed you to radically see it so differently?
Yeah, well, to your question, I mean, it wasn't finding this root cause, right? And I what I came to see later is like all of that innocent effort that we put into, is it because this happened or that happened, all of that, it points us in a wrong direction. And so for years of spinning in circles trying to find that root cause, it just kind of kept me feeling like, okay, this is a real solid problem, and there's a cause for it way back there that I need to identify, and that kept me spinning in circles, and I think it does for people. So what it was much, much more immediate, so immediate that words can't really even talk about it, much more right here, right now, and essentially seeing that the cause, if you will, is believing thought. It's identifying with thought. And so of course, like we have these body mind machines that are really truly machines. They work in a very machine like way. And when we don't feel well, for example, and then we reach for some food or for some drink, or we grab our phone or whatever it is, it's all the same, all the same.
Yeah.
We go home and we binge watch TV for several hours, it's all the same. Whatever we do, if we start to feel better, our machine, it's just a machine brain, says, "Oh, that did it."
Mm.
That did it. And it remembers that, right? And so all the time, our machine brain starts talking about that thing that it thinks made us feel better. And it's kind of that simple. We can talk about it a lot more, but that's the cause. If there's a cause, there's just a simple kind of conditioning happening. And so that's amazing, because now it's not about me and my childhood and my past and all of this stuff. So what I started to see is like, oh yeah, my brain just puts out these repetitive urges for food, or this conversation about food, but I like that's just a machine doing what a machine does. And as soon as a lot of the meaning was stripped out of that, like why is it doing this? What's wrong with me? Is this an addiction? Why do I have it? All of that started to fall silent, because I saw, no, this is just simple conditioning. It's just
Mm.
mechanical conditioning. And as we see that and we get a little more comfortable with that, it just doesn't, everything starts to unravel. It doesn't make sense to act on it in the same way, and a lot of things start to change.
Yeah. So it's almost that sense of we're looking for a feeling when we're not in balance with ourselves, when we're not maybe connected to ourselves. And as you say, we experience that urge, that impulse and it's just that little person that sits in your head, or your lizard brain, as I heard you describe it in the book, that's saying, hey, Sarah or Amy, if you go and finish off the pie in the fridge, or you go and have a cigarette, or have another glass of wine. I know for me, it's that that conversation that you talked about in your book. For me, it's the fuck it factor. It's like, oh, fuck it, I'll have another glass of wine, or fuck it,
Yeah.
I'll have another slice of pizza, or whatever. And we can almost talk ourselves into acting on our impulse, can't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we can for sure. And that's where, that's where willpower comes in a lot. Is we those impulses are there because there's just a machine that's just it's not like we actually want the pizza. It's not that the pizza's even going to taste good. It's none of that really. It's that there's a machine there saying more, 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 which it always does. It always does, right? I mean, you cuddle with your kids and have this nice warm feeling, and the machine says, oh, I hope that happens again, and I can't believe how old they're getting, that might not happen so like our machine, it's always just wanting more, more, more. And that's survival based, that's okay, but we want to see, yeah, that's just how that machine works. So exactly, when it's saying, oh, just have another glass of wine, just one more show, one more piece of pizza, it's not that we need to go to battle with that. It's not that it even is telling us anything personal or meaningful about us. It's that the more people keep seeing, oh, that is what a mind would say right now. But is that just that reflex? It's just that impulse. Everything around that starts to relax and look a bit different.
Hmm. And out of curiosity, when somebody's acted on that initial, they fed the machine like the first time round. I know something that I talk to clients about is, once you've had the cigarette, or once you've had the glass of wine, or the piece of cake, or checked Facebook, or whatever the compulsion is, if it was really about that, then you wouldn't need another one. But half an hour later, you might be lighting up another cigarette, or you might be pouring another glass of wine, or checking Instagram or something. And I often find that's where people go, oh yeah, that's a good point. If that's what I was really looking for, why am I not satiated? Why am I not full from that? And they start to recognize that it is that lizard brain, that feeling that they seem to be chasing. And I'm curious about your take on that feeling. If people, what it is maybe that you teach people, or that you do with people, that helps them to create a feeling for themselves that doesn't rely on these external things giving them that feeling. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's such a great point for people to see that you're right. It just the logic doesn't add up, and that it's a good way to see that that is a mind that just you give it a little bit and it's always going to want more, and it's not about the thing that we're getting. It really isn't. So I guess here's how I'll see if I can describe this in a really simple way. It looks like we want comfort or relief or peace, and it's out there in something. Now, even as I say that, you might be listening and think like, well, I know that peace isn't really in, another piece of pizza or another glass of wine. Oh, so we know that intellectually, but let's just play this out. Like in the moment, it does look like I don't like this feeling. And if I add something, I'm going to feel calmer. So it totally looks like that, and it looks like the thing matters, like you want your wine or your cigarette or whatever your thing in the moment that your mind is yelling about is. And as long as it looks like that, I think it's just going to be hard because we're going to be left with our only tool to sort of fight that is willpower. We're going to have to say, oh, I really want that, but I'm just going to sit here in this horrible feeling and I'm going to feel it for a while. And yeah, sure, it'll pass, whatever. But it's hard. It's hard and we're suffering. So what we can do is kind of completely flip that on its head and to make this much easier. And part of what we're seeing when we flip it on its head is that thing out there doesn't give us anything.
Mm.
Literally, and this is hard to see sometimes. We'll just,
Yeah.
hold it as a what if it doesn't really click. But like even like that glass of wine or that thing we're addicted to, even that cigarette, when you're addicted to cigarettes, there's a feeling that comes, yes. But all that feeling is coming from is the fact that our mind is saying to us, when you have that, you'll feel better.
Mm.
So even with like alcohol, we can take alcohol as a good example because yes, like chemically things happen, biologically things happen.
Yeah.
But they've done many studies that even the biological chemical effects of alcohol, yeah, your mind will start getting a little agitated as the alcohol leaves your system. And
Mm.
that agitation says, give me more. I don't like this feeling. And so we give it more and it calms that agitation a little bit. But that physical effect, like the actual just physical effect of that, very minor and very easy to live through. It's the mental effect that gets us. It's our all the meaning and the interpretation and the I don't feel okay unless I have my wine. That story that a brain has come up with to make sense of this physical stuff we're feeling.
Yeah.
So when we start to see through that story and people really open to the idea that the stuff we're grabbing and doing and all of that isn't actually doing anything for us, it's kind of just keeping this cycle going, then that's when a lot of insight happens. That's when it's like, oh, okay, so if this isn't making me peaceful, what is?
Yeah.
That, which is a huge question, right? And so that's where we start to see, okay, well, what if peace is our nature? Nothing makes us peaceful. It's impossible. It's silly to say that because totally feels like stuff makes us peaceful. But when we flip this paradigm around, peace is our nature. Quiet is our nature. Happiness is our nature. Sure, a lot of the time we don't feel that. But that's okay. All that is energy moving through. It's a busy mind, it's thought moving through. And all we have to do is nothing, and all of that will settle and we come back to our natural state. So we all have been conditioned into a backwards paradigm where it looks like peace is not my natural state. I need to go find things to make it happen.
Mm.
When we flip the paradigm and we say, no, peace is here all the time, we're just pointed away from it because we're identified with thought, then it kind of starts to come together and it's like, oh, okay, so willpower doesn't make sense and fighting and doing more doesn't make sense. Seeing this insightfully and starting to settle, like let things settle, is what gets us to where we want to be.
Yeah. And I love the way that you describe that feeling of agitation, which is that sort of come on, it's almost like, yeah, there is that lizard brain that's going, come on, Amy, you don't want to
Yeah.
feel agitated. So we, unless we do battle, as you say, from that willpower, which is always interesting because that's an oxymoron, that there's no power in will, but we just find ourselves just giving into that urge and the story, the belief. I've got a friend who she does make me smile because she's not a smoker, but she's an on-off smoker, and she's like, I'm doing it because of my rebellious streak. I'm like, yeah, you're 46, you're grown up, you're allowed to buy cigarettes. I'm not sure how rebellious that is.
Right.
But those stories that we also create, which it's almost like that lizard brain is using those stories to keep the machine getting fed, isn't it?
Sorry. Yeah, totally. It's that's it. That's it 100%. And I love, like, even as you say that, the lizard brain and the machine, I think this starts to really help us see this isn't about us. And
Yeah.
that's huge for people. Just like your friend, like it's not about, oh, you have a rebellious streak. And, a mind will always tell a story that has us as the main character that just tries to make things make sense. Because that's our mind's job, is to interpret everything that's felt, spin it into a story that makes some sort of sense. But that doesn't mean the story's true.
Yeah.
So when we strip that away a bit, yeah, it's like it's so mechanical. It's so conditioned. And that's such good news because it to how we started this conversation, it means, oh my gosh, we don't have to dig into our past and look at what happened and why and all of that. We get to just keep it right here as at, oh, I'm feeling something. And this feeling is just a feeling.
Yeah. And even though we don't have to dig into the past, do you find that it's helpful to understand why maybe somebody started to do something in the first place? Because I guess I'm curious about what some people, for example, can have a glass of wine after work, which I'm sure is very common. I know certainly in the pandemic, people were drinking way, way, way more than the recommended daily allowance, and being quite open about that. But what it is that allows somebody to just stop doing something because it's not serving them anymore. And then those people that end up um, becoming quite addicted to something, that they keep acting on those impulses. What do you see as the difference, and if it's helpful? Because I think in your book you talked about a lady that bought some clothes for herself. She got a new job, and it was a wonderful insight about how we can start to do something, but what takes it from that to an addiction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think when we can just insightfully look back and see, oh, here's the story my mind made up here, or here's what was going on here. As I felt lonely and bored, and the drink took the edge off during the pandemic, I had some anxiety, and like that's what did. If we spot something like that naturally for ourselves, and it just resonates, and it helps give some context, and most of all it helps us see that this isn't some big personal problem, like it just helps things sort of make sense, then that's great. I think a lot of times though we don't know the why, so it's interesting because again it's kind of our brain's job, or part of our brain especially, like goes in, will just make a story about anything. So it can be kind of tricky sometimes if we say like, oh, we need to know where this started or why it happened, because your brain will deliver. It will tell you exactly why and when, and often it's completely making something up.
Yeah.
Like it's just that's not the truth of it. So I think it's good to know that we don't need to know the story, but again, that doesn't mean don't be curious and look, because sometimes it's right there and it's helpful to see.
Yeah. And I guess the reason that somebody might start doing something, I mean, you take somebody that's maybe smoked for a long time. I mean, I smoked for a long time. I couldn't tell you why I ever had a cigarette in the first place. I couldn't even tell you when my first one was. But the reasons I kept smoking would have been probably very different to why I ever started in the first place. So I
Yes.
love what you said there, that people don't need to feel like they have to go digging it up their past, because I think that's what blocks a lot of people from getting help, because they think, oh, I'm going to have to sit and talk about the relationship that I had with my mother and my father and the dog and the cat and everything. So they just think, oh, you know what, it's easier for me to just keep smoking or drinking or binge eating or whatever.
Yeah, it's such a relief to know that it's just about what's arising right now. Ultimately, if we can see that experience that's arising right now, if we can see that differently, that's really all we need. Everything else is just extra if we see it.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg's special effects department.
Yeah.
Now, for people that are listening to this, Amy, they might be thinking, God, this sounds almost too good to be true. Like, wow, like they might have, as you say, like an eating disorder or cigarettes or checking Facebook or whatever it is that the habit, the addiction is, and they're thinking, gosh, okay, I can start seeing this differently. But we may have some people that are listening to this that are thinking, yeah, but when I'm in the clutches of an impulse or a craving for that it seems less possible to be able to break away. And I'm wondering what you would say to those people.
I think that's exactly why willpower doesn't work. So 100% they're right. No, of course they're right. In the clutches of an urge or a craving that looks and feels very real, very personal, very much about like I need this thing, it's going to be really hard to break away. And there'll be a lot of times when people don't break away. That's the problem, right? That's what we get caught up in. But remember that what we're sharing here for everyone, it's not something we pull out and use when we're in an urge or a craving. It's something we explore and get curious about, hopefully when we feel good, like now, like we're just listening to this and we start to see it in a new way. And that what happens there is that when this stuff arises, when an urge or a craving arises, or when your mind starts saying, oh, just one more and no big deal, you see that in a new way.
Mm.
So it it sounds too good to be true if it were like a magic wand that we just pull out when we need it, but it isn't. It's a whole new way of seeing yourself in life and all experience that when I work with people and we really explore this over like a decent chunk of time, everything literally looks and feels different in their life. And from there, I mean, old habits just don't even make sense anymore. That's where it gets to be effortless and not about willpower. We have this sea change first, where everything we see just looks totally different, and behavior naturally is going to follow.
Got you, got you. So for people listening, it's not necessarily that this is, a one-hit wonder. You're going to listen to this and bang. I mean, I'm a hypnotherapist. Maybe we can bang and stop those behaviors. But it's taking that pressure off, that they might still act on a few urges, but they're going to start to see things through a new perspective, through new eyes. So it starts to naturally lose its grip.
Yes, totally. And the good news about that is when I work with people and we're exploring this and we're looking at it with regard to their habit, but we're really just looking at it as a universal way that we work, uh, all kinds of stuff changes.
Yeah,
So it's not about just breaking a habit. A habit, whatever it is that brings us in is what brings us in, but it only brings us in. From there, everything starts to unravel and change. Whatever needs to or whatever wants to change, changes. And we see life in a way that doesn't go back, that just tends to be like, okay, once you see it this way, it's like, wow, I can't believe I didn't see this before. I can't believe I didn't see that experience moves through me and is safe and fleeting. I thought I had to go to battle with every thought and every feeling. Well, once you see that, it's going to naturally apply to your habit, but it's also going to apply to your relationships and your work and that anxious feeling you have wherever. So that's the beauty in this, is it's so much deeper than anything, any specific topic.
absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned thinking, actually, because we've kind of been talking about those external behaviors that we do in terms of like reaching for a glass of wine or for Facebook or our phone or whatever. But actually, as you said at the beginning, this is about really understanding the way that we operate, the universal self, and how that can apply to those patterns of thought, which, if I think about some of the habitual thoughts that people have, again, that they continue to act on, sometimes without realizing it. Sometimes it's that sort of unconscious mind. But how does this apply from your experience to those either anxious thoughts or those thoughts like I'm not good enough or I've got to prove myself, or whatever those habitual unhelpful thought patterns are?
Yeah, well, ultimately, what we're looking at is all experiences the same. That we are, like we said earlier, we're healthy and peaceful by default. And then we have a mind that's constantly talking, and thought and feeling are constantly arising, and they're coming up to be seen and felt, and then they move along. So what's again, this is kind of like a really big picture, but what starts to happen for people is we just see, wow, I'm okay. There's just this flow of experience that's moving through. Now, in terms of habits, like behave the kind of habits we've been talking about, that flow of experience might be saying one more glass, one more glass, one more glass. Fine. But when it's saying you're not good enough and no one likes you and why do you even do this work and you just should go back to bed, that's no different than one more glass. It's absolutely no different. It's only different in the content, the story of it. But we all know that that can be your mind's favorite story for a couple months of your life, maybe, and then it picks on something else. Now this is a new issue of the day, and now that's the new problem. So as people start to back up and see, wow, it's not about the content. It's not about what my mind's talking about. It's the fact that thought is always arising and minds are always talking, and none of that has anything to do with me. That's huge. It's huge. So that's again like everything that just, everything starts to kind of look a little bit different, no matter what the story or the area of life it is.
Yeah. And I love that term story because it's so powerful, because we've been telling stories since the days that we sat around a campfire with one another. It's how we passed information down from one person to the next generation. But understanding, as you say, that the mind, it creates story, it relates to story. And how many of us are not necessarily even aware that we're telling these stories, but we just keep telling them, and we think that we're the main character, where they're not. They're just a story that's maybe attached a bit of meaning and emotion to it, and it's that consciousness that's making it seem something other than it's not, isn't it?
Yeah, and even the storytelling is just, we're not even doing that. Our mind is. So even that is 100% just a mechanical, physical, mind-body process. A brain will always tell stories and try to connect things and to give us this nice, coherent experience of life, that feels safe and that it thinks it can predict things so that it can keep us alive. So when we go way back, again, everything that's happening makes absolute perfect sense and it's full of intelligence from the perspective of mind, body, machine, and just, everything that's going on. It's just that, like you said, like we get so wrapped up in those stories because they're about us. We get so in the content that we lose sight of the fact that it's just a brain making up stories.
And it's interesting, there's particularly around anxiety. I mean, I've probably worked with anxiety more than anything else from the last 10 years of working with people. And it's a little bit like you said at the beginning, so many people have got this story that I'm just an anxious person, or I'm just a natural born worrier, or it's just part of my personality. And again, when you help them to see that that's not true, it's just a story, they start to, well, initially my experience is they're kind of sort of almost examining this, going, or the mind's going, I'm not sure I want to let go of this story. This story's kind of, it's had some secondary gains or advantages to it. But again, when you help them see that that's another story, God, we're full of stories.
It's just story and thought all the way down. You peel one back and then you see, but again, like we're saying, we don't have to peel them all back and look at them individually, but you're right. It's like that's all it is. And yeah, there is some gain, even just familiarity. I mean, and again, that's not gain to us, but to our brain, it doesn't want variety. It wants to know what's coming because that's how it evolved our species. If it can know what's likely to happen in a minute, it can keep us alive and safe. And of course, today we don't have threats to our safety around every corner for the most part, but our brain doesn't know that. So it's still just like, nope, same as yesterday, please. Same as yesterday, please. And then we are like, oh, my mind always says this. It must be who I am. Like, no, that's just a very efficient brain just doing its job. So seeing
Absolutely.
that is so cool. You're right. Like taking a look at that, it can feel weird. It can feel like this is who I've thought I was forever. I mean, people have major insights. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, but the freedom that comes in that is huge. It's like we've been wearing a mask our entire lives, and you can have had that mask on your entire life and it's still a mask.
Yeah,
So, so you can still take it off and see what's around it.
I know. And it's so, I know as a therapist, even thinking about when I very first trained and looking at belief patterns and limiting beliefs, whether they were limiting beliefs around, I need to be seen to be perfect. I mean, that was a big mask that I used to wear. Um, a belief that you'd maybe always been on your own, you were unlovable, you weren't good enough, that money was the root of all evil, whatever the belief was. And I remember when I came to this understanding in the same similar way that you did, Amy, that it was like breathing this huge sigh of relief, because I'd spent years thinking, we've got to get to the root cause of why this person believes the way that they do. And it was like digging a hole. And it
Yeah.
was like this hole never, it just got bigger the more that we digged. And you just thought, I'm never going to find the root cause in all of these people. But so many sort of schools of psychotherapy and psychology, that was their story, that was their belief, that you've got to find that moment in time. And if you're working with somebody that's been on the planet for a while, you're like, we might be here some time. So
Yeah.
I know when I came to this understanding that, this is all just story, and it's, as you said, it's what's taking form in the moment. It was like, oh wow, I felt like I found the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Although that was also replaced by, I have spent thousands of
Yeah.
pounds on different training courses that have been leading me up the garden path, when actually that wisdom was just, it's such a game changer with clients. Have you found that as well? Clearly you have.
Totally, totally. And it's so simple that it can't be true, except it is. It's like, it's like it's funny that that's a reaction often, that people have. It's like, it can't be this simple. It can't be this simple, which is just showing us, no, like, life out here is just very complex and complicated, and our mind work loves complexity. So it's like we've been living in this belief system, that yes, it's hard and you find the cause and all of that, and it's so much stuff and so much to do that I think it feels sometimes like, are you kidding me? Like, now what? Because now I'm just floating in this, like, everything's okay and none of this means anything, that's my words on it. But yeah, it can feel very jarring. It can feel very like, wow, now what? But it's amazing to see what happens when we're in that place.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know about you, I'd love to hear. I know certainly I can still get a little bit tripped up from time to time when, um, recovering from COVID, for example, I wasn't necessarily, I didn't have my Wonder Woman pants on. I wasn't firing on all four cylinders. So my mind was kind of going down a few rabbit warrens of thought. And when you're a bit tired, it's easy to go into those default settings and not necessarily see what's happening until you kind of go, oh, okay, I'm just doing that thing that I've spent quite a lot of time in training doing, and then the mind just self-corrects itself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know that that ever ends, but I think what starts to happen is it just doesn't matter. It's just like, I mean, at one point in time, we could probably feel a certain way and then beat ourselves up for that because I
Um,
shouldn't be feeling this way, or we go on that why chase of why am I having a bad day, and how amazing to just have a bad day, or not even a bad day really, but just not feel great for a little while. And who cares? You don't need to know why. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean anything. So that's where it's like a lot of that layer of story and thought just isn't there. So yeah, it's not that we never get caught up in thought. It's just like, oh yeah, there was that again.
Absolutely. I know certainly when I first became a therapist, I was very good at beating myself up, and I think, oh my God, I've got to have all my ducks in a row. I've got to be perfect, which of course fed into the belief I've got to be seen to be perfect. I can't have a bad day. I'm a therapist. I sort people out. And it was like, oh my goodness, all of those expectations that we place on ourselves. But again, it's just another story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Amy, for anybody that's listening that's just blown away, I'm sure, by this conversation, and I feel like I could talk to you all day about stories. If they were interested in finding out more or working with you, how would they get hold of you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Probably the best way is my website, which is dramyjohnson.com, and there's all kinds of stuff there. So I have a podcast. I do videos all the time. I have many books, as you mentioned. I have a online school for people who are struggling with anxiety and habits, and that's really a great way into this. If you're for someone who's just struggling with something and wants to see a new way, the Little School of Big Change is a 6-week course, which is great for that. I train coaches, I do all kinds of stuff, but it's all on the website. That's probably the best place.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you and to understand a little bit more about your background and how you're changing lives. It really, really is. So thank you so much, Amy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been great to talk with you too.